Sirsi, India. 10 miles outside of the city, in the southwestern state of Karnataka, within the river Shalmala, is one of the country's most popular pilgrimage sites, Sahasralinga. Hidden under these waters for most of the year lie stone sculptures known as shiva lingams. These sacred idols are representations of the god Shiva and are visible to thousands of pilgrims once a year at the festival of Mahashivaratri.
Mahashivaratri is a festival where Shiva is worshipped for his great nature. Mahashivaratri is usually held in the end of February or beginning of March. During that month, the water level of the Salmala river drops down so that all the Shivalingas are exposed.
Shiva is depicted as the Shivalinga, as kind of a spherical column, the flaming pillar that is the cosmic axis of the universe. Every Shivalinga that's in worship is set into a yoni. This is a special base, and it actually serves kind of a utility, a function. It's a spout so that when you pour offerings over the surface of the linga, they wash over the sacred body. Images of the Shivalinga are found throughout Southeast Asia, even in parts of East Asia. Sometimes images of Shiva as the lingam also made its way into China and into Japan.
My term's confused. I do apologize, so you'll have to give me credit for that anyway. And he said I put 3 levels, like a cake, of particle board together, and I put some washers and coils on it and some rods, which we're going to look at here. And he said I hooked it up to the signal generator set there, the frequency, and I fired it up and nothing happened. And I thought surely I would see some magnetic effects from it. And he said all of a sudden it started to lift up off the workbench, just slowly lifting up. And he said I was amazed, and wow, what have I got here, you know? And started to lift up a little bit further, and he said, wow, look at the air is kind of mottled gray and kind of, wow. Oh, if I stick my hand in it, I wonder if it'll hurt. I'll grab this broomstick. It's not conductive. It feels like jello you're going through. Wow, it's a field. Well, I'll just turn that off. We'll do that again. He reaches over here to these knife clips he's got for the power supply, and he pulls it back like this, and it goes, and a big arc, double arc jumps over and gaps the air and keeps on running the spark in the air without the thinking. He says, oh dear, can't shut it off. And he said, well, and he takes this broom handle, goes whack like that, and hits this gray area under the floating thing. Well, then it all stopped, but it was a huge electrical discharge down the pole up into the mains, blew the power transformer on the block, and, well, power company came out the next day. Darndest thing, he said, I don't know what has happened. I was sitting out here watching TV, and it just, But he had anti-gravity. So he gave this to George, and George told me about it years later. I said, George, where's that envelope? This is before I left to work with Teller's Group. So my mom and dad moved to Florida. I think it's in my boxes there. I said, well, did you ever open it? He said, no. I said, well, what happened to the navigator? He said, come to think of it, a few weeks after that, he was transferred out. I never saw him again. I thought, small wonder. All right, so I filed that away. Then, probably a few months later, I was recruited by Teller's Group, and I got to see why what the navigator did worked. Now, up there at the top left is how he wound one set of washer and rod. And then he put them into this on particle board. 15-degree spacing as we twisted the various layers apart. And when I was later into the real guys, this is the application of one of his coils and rods. And that's the inside of a 30-foot diameter human-made anti-gravity craft. It's as simple as that. What I don't have here are some things that I will probably not show publicly for safety reasons, but I'll explain that. In the real craft, this coil here and this one come up over an archway here so as not to block what's called the breather of the washer. This is a hollow square-sectioned mu metal inductor core. This is like one of those washers he had on his particle board. See how it wraps around one washer? There's a little gap in it. Now for the coil going up the rod in the center, we have this one here and this one here. What he did was he used pulsed direct current to generate a spinning vortex right here in the fabric of space, if you wish, into the ether space. I'm going to show you how that works in the next animation. But this, I promise you, is a 30-foot diameter craft drive coil. It produces a number of very interesting effects on the crew and the surrounding area by altering time. It's not a time machine. It just simply means that for people inside the field at various positions from the center and out, time passes at a different rate. While I'm on that subject very quickly, if you watch a hummingbird, or watch a bee, you will see that they move a lot quicker than you can predict where they're going or try to catch one, or a fly. These things operate at a higher operative neural rate than you and I do, yet they do function. They are simply looking at us as slow, sluggish, moving things, and they are just living 5 to 10 times faster than us. With these craft, when the energy is pumped into this, and into the superstructure, and into the crew, all their atoms, all their molecules get extra energy, and they become like the hydrogen atom in a hot air or a hydrogen balloon type thing. They become inertially lighter, but yet they are moving faster. So when they go to do one of these miraculous right-angle turns at 10,000 miles an hour that are impossible, they have not violated the rules of physics at all. What they have done is they've said, attention crew, we're going to turn a corner about 10,000 miles an hour here, prepare. And somebody in the crew says, okay, you got the cards? Yeah, okay, I'll get something to drink, get up a table, and they're now going to turn the corner, and it takes them 5 minutes, let's say, to turn that corner. But you on the outside see, that's impossible, it would rip apart. But it's not, because everything in here is at a different energy density like that hummingbird, and they are being uniformly accelerated, and as they go around that corner, they're looking out the window, well, sometimes, and they're saying, look, everybody's in slow motion. And they lose 10 minutes of their life relative to you. Or they gain. In other words, they age at 10 minutes while you're only aging a fraction of a second. It's like when you were at the fairgrounds, the showgrounds. As a kid, they used to have this big cylinder that you'd stand on and have a floor, and it'd start to spin. Then all of a sudden, the floor would drop out, and somebody across you, you'd all stick to the edge of it and spin sideways, stuck on the side of it. And somebody'd usually, wet their pants or something, get really excited because there's no floor under them. But what it is the centrifuge effect is holding you up. Now, if you extrapolate that to a ball instead of a cylinder, and you have a ball with oil in it and another ball inside that, and you're inside that ball, and somebody pushes you off a 50-story building. I wouldn't try it, but anyway, hypothetically, what would happen is your double spheres with oil would hit the ground, bounce, you being inside that ball and lopsided because your weight's not uniformly distributed, would cause the inner ball to spin. And what would happen is the big ball on the outside would come to a rest in somebody's parking lot or something down there, and people would listen, they'd hear going on inside. And after a few minutes, you in the inside spinning ball, like at the fairgrounds, would come to a stop. And what you have done is you've stretched out the period of time that you normally would take to crash into the dirt and kill yourself over several minutes, and that doesn't cause structural fatigue. When I was at the academy here, the Air Force Academy, we used to describe a crash of an aircraft as a landing in which the vertical component was reduced to zero in such a short period of time as to cause structural fatigue. That wouldn't happen in this kind of a situation. These things are not only possible, they're being done. They've been done behind your back for very good reasons, which we'll certainly address before we get through here today. Now, do any of you ever recall in the late 50s, early 60s, it wasn't Dino Craspadon, there was a science fiction writer, not a science fiction writer, a UFO investigator back then, mentioning the guy that knew the secret, the military guy named Lorenzo that knew the secret about the flying saucers. Do you remember that? Probably not. Well, anyway, it was a rumor in the UFO community back then that there was some guy that had the secret to anti-gravity that knew it, and he was in control of all this for the military, and his name was Lorenzo. Probably a captain or something, they weren't sure. It wasn't a Mr. Lorenzo. It was what is called a Lorentz, L-O-R-E-N-T-Z-O. What you just saw up here makes what is called a Lorentz O. The secret to the anti-gravity problem or situation is the Lorentz O, named after a mathematician Lorentz. It tells what happens when you have electricity going this way in a conductor, and at the same time you have electricity going around it to make like this in a different direction. In between them, a force appears, whether in air, water, whatever. It's called the Lorentz force. And it tries to get these two conductors to line up. And if you don't let them, then the stress has to be transferred to the medium you're in, anti-gravity. Now this device here, I built to show people. We're going to see that little thing over here on the left animate. And I'm going to show you a long quartz tube. And inside it will be a copper pipe, a thin pipe of copper, lining the inside of this tube. And then I'm going to put a nail and a cork right down the middle of it, and I'm going to take electricity from a electric arc welder, 1200 watts at about 60 volts. And I'm going to shove that down through that nail, through some salt water, which is just tap water with a bit of salt, a couple tablespoons of salt, and some hydrochloric acid to make it conductive. And it's going to go through that water into this copper sheath, which is then connected to the other end of the copper tube back to the electric arc welder. You'll see all this. I'm telling you beforehand so that you can just contemplate what you're seeing. What you're going to see at the end of all this is that scene right there, where I have a copper tube with all this, and the glass tube with all this water in it, sitting right down inside of two speaker magnets. You know, the back of your speakers, those round donut magnets, they have a north-south field running like this, which is the same as one of those washer coils that I was showing you before. And when I do that, and I just do nothing but hit the power switch, and electricity starts to flow down from that nail you see at the top down to the copper, you're going to see spin. And that's the beginning of the vortex tornado, the Lorentz O. And you can use that to make plasma craft and anti-gravity craft. You can also use it in water at lower temperatures to make very fast boats. That's when I was a little bit younger. Well, maybe a lot. There's your, well, that might be brass. I can't tell from the color. It's brass or copper, just a conductor. Quartz tube, because this gets very hot very quickly. Glove, obviously, to keep from burning myself again. There's your ring magnets. There's the jar of water from the tap. Still water is better than you put a couple of tablespoons of salt and about, half an ounce of hydrochloric or something in it. That's the company that made the electric arc welder. That's a 100 amp diode down there, which turns the alternating current into one direction, direct current. And there's the magic nail that goes down through the cork. I forget what we made that out of, but it was something that didn't melt easy. And here you go. No moving parts except the bubbles that form from the heat, showing where the ions are traveling, following the vortex field set up. And this occurs down the center of any of those craft. The next time you're sitting next to somebody blowing smoke rings, witness a miracle. The smoke ring can do some marvelous things. If you stand here in this room and put up, say, an elephant ear plant back there, you know, those big green ears float like that, or a candle, a lit candle, and you went as hard as you could huff and puff, you could not blow out the candle or move the big elephant ear back there, the plant. Yet, if you take a device that makes a smoke ring, and you aim it back there and you go like that, that little ring of energy, the same amount that you would have blown out and lost into oblivion out here, same amount in a tight little package goes right over there and blows out a candle or moves that target elephant ear like that. Now, in this test here, I've used slow speed. Some of it I've done some time-lapse or some slow-mo camera stuff. But watch, as you see there, there's a smoke ring on the right, but behind it, from the inside, is a long cylinder of smoke. These craft that we're talking about, this technology, and a number of other technologies that they use, including plasma beams, all rely on what you're going to see here. This is a wrinkle. A smoke ring is not a series of spinning, things around this point here. It is a wrinkle like you would put in a carpet by doing that and making a wave go through the carpet, except it's in 3 dimensions and wrapped around. So as a result, when a smoke ring moves through the clear air, it absorbs clear air on the periphery of it in a layer that goes into the inside and then does a reversal like yin and yang and comes out pushing smoke ahead of it. And so a shell of smoke, a pipe, comes out the back. These things here are a rough approximation of what makes an atom or an electron. They are not particles, they are waves in a medium. All right. I have made them bounce off each other like particles, shooting them rapidly so that they hit and bounce off of tables and still keep their shape. These are why scientists think that light acts like a particle and like a wave, and so physicists say, well, let's call it a wavicle. It's because it has periodic motion, yet it defines a very tight field like a particle would. This is a device that I use to do the rest of what you're going to see here. It's a plastic pipe, plexiglass pipe, and I've just made it so it'll make smoke rings with a piece of shower cap stuck on the back as a rubber membrane, and I pull it and pop it loose, and I get 70 to 90 miles an hour out of the little donut. Same thing you can do. You're going to see here in a bright section where I have a smoke cloud, an oil vapor cloud, and I shoot a clear air toroid through it, and you will see a perfect black, subtle, perfect circle go through it. This is why when UFOs go through clouds or various other things, you see nothing. They open it up like the mitral valve in the heart. They go like that, and they just cut a hole and close it right behind them. They don't make any swish, any wake, nothing. No sound wave, no sound barrier. That's because of what you're seeing here. Now watch closely. It's subtle. Did you see it? Didn't see my hand move, did you? Right in the center, down to the bottom. There you go, you see? See, now I've slowed it up so you can see how I've reversed it back and forth. Watch how it acts like a valve. Okay. A couple more just to show you. It doesn't really do a lot of damage. In fact, when I've fired these things across the room like that, I've had candles 30 feet away over on this side here, because candle flame is very sensitive, to motion. And I'll have the candle flame over there and shoot that way. And as the donut passes like this, the candle flame goes and bows toward the donut passing. The shock wave is there, but the energy stays in the center. It's a very, very efficient thing. Now here's that mitral valve thing I was talking about. Clear one going through like that. See how it cuts a perfect hole? If you have a ship like that, it does that with gravity, it does it with clouds, it does it with water. Fascinating, isn't it? So what do we do in the evenings at home? I was telling you about it is there. It's exaggerated a bit. It's a little thinner. The core section here with the main ring toroid. This one here with like a Faraday cage. It wasn't exactly that, but that's what it's for. This also held the superstructure onto the top of the craft. And there you can see some more of it there. I had correspondence and talked with a man named Townsend Brown, and also got a hold of his lab film from the Bonson Corporation in 1950, one of the only 2 copies in existence. And I discussed the Philadelphia experiment and a number of other things with Dr. Brown when he was in Catalina Island, California, before he died. Townsend filmed here was at the Bonson Corporation in Salem, and at that time, he was trying to generate anti-gravity using the biofuel-Brown effect. He had failed to understand that you have to recirculate your wake like a smoke ring. So he was trying to do brute force, as many of them are still trying to do. But with a smoke ring and with charged particles, if I push out this way and the wake of my pushing comes around behind me into my intakes and adds to my energy, I use a lot less energy to go forward. In fact, it's like going, I reckon it's like going into a saloon bar in the Wild West. Break your boots and your guns, and you come up to the saloon door, it's packed. Hello, bar, I'm here. And you shove the door open, you're going to get a little resistance. But if you come up to the thing and you open the doors back, just, excuse me, fellas, could I just move in here? No resistance, in essence, and you get in. So what you do is you make a place for yourself in the air or in a gravitational field. Before you get there, you scoop out a hole. You put yourself in it, and it closes behind you, and there's no pushing wake. There's no sound barrier. There's no light barrier, in fact. We can go many times the speed of light using this concept in space. Brown tried a toroid coil in his. I've got his lab notes, his books as well, lab books. Over here was called the beta machine. This was generating his high voltage 100,000 volt charges that were generating these arcs on this. This saucer here, I've held it, it was about 3 feet in diameter. This coil, he would slip on top of that and they would put high charge through it, but it was only half of the solution. If he'd done the other coil and had known to do it, where he wrapped another coil like this and put those in phase, he would have had anti-gravity in a big way. He was that close, that close. I have a great deal of respect for the work that Dr. Brown did. And as I say, I'm privileged to have access to all of that stuff. This is some of his note work on the board for the design of the craft, some of his vacuum testing on the lower left, and some of the high voltage testing before they put the coils on the top. And that is a real deal. That's not an animation, and that was just finished last week in California by one of our associates. We are making working models of these things to show you. So it is real. You can do it. Chris Craw did that.
How far do you think the government has progressed with this?
The government, per se, has little say in it. This was a supranational operation.